Welcome to the next edition of the Adventure Box podcast with Zach Edwards and Historical Conquest. Now, if you don't know, Historical Conquest is a card game that promotes history just by having fun. So you're playing like the games of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, mixture with the games of the board game Risk, and all the cards in the game are historically based. So you're going to get a lot of information just by having fun and playing a game. But this is actually our podcast that goes with our curriculum. That's right. So if you do not have the curriculum and you don't plan to have the curriculum, that is fine. Please listen. There's a lot of things we're going to be going over and some of the great things that you'll actually find if you go into the curriculum or have any desire to maybe go in the curriculum. You're going to find out so much more than you did not know at the time when you started this podcast. And if you go into the curriculum, you're going to get a whole lot more. So let's get into it. This week I'm so excited. This week we're going into ancient Mesoamerica. So the reason why this is so important is you have the Olmecs, which is one of the mother civilizations in the whole world. It's one of the cradles of civilization in the Americas. So this is great to know. Then there's the Aztecs and the Mayans. Now, this is Central America, so there are a lot of tribes. But these are the three main ones. Olmecs, basically the main one at that time. And then there was the Mayas and the Aztecs that broke off of a lot of others, took over other tribes, and added them into their own organization, their own group. Now, here's the question. Again, we've been talking about, over the last 2 weeks, theory and fact. Theory is what may have happened. Fact is what actually happened. And because none of us were there at the time, we do not know exactly what happened. But what we do know is we know enough information to give you a at least roundabout perspective of everything that was happening during that time. So let's go over a little bit what we did last week. Last week we talked about North America and the North American tribes that were up here and all the cultures and where they came from. The theory is that they came over the Bering Straits through the land bridge into Alaska and then filtered either up here in the north with the Inuits, who then became the Inuits. But this was the Arctic culture. We had the Northwest Coast culture, where everywhere from Southeast Alaska all the way down to Washington State, maybe even a little bit to Oregon. You had the Hopewell and Adena, which were over here in the Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Missouri area. Then you also had, we went over the Great Plains and the Plateau people. We also went over a tiny bit over the California culture. And then we ended with Poverty Point. Now, Poverty Point is again over here down in Louisiana, Mississippi area. They were really important because they are basically where we think everywhere branched off. All those tribes that are in that area, and there are a lot of them speckled in right here. Why? Because it's really good land down there. Fertile. The temperatures are not extremely cold. Yes, they're very hot, but you can live in hot. Cold, you can die in. Okay, you can die in hot too. So sorry, that's not the point. Anyways, so we have all these North American countries, but this week we're going to be talking about Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, not the Caribbean. We're going to go into that later on, but these cultures right here, Mesoamerica. And Mesoamerica is, it's the creme de la creme. This is exactly what I love studying because this goes back into the most substantial civilizations in the Americas. The most substantial ones, the ones that everyone talks about. Again, sorry to say the North American tribes do not get as much credit as they should. But you have the Aztecs, you got the Mayas, and then you got the Incas, which are down here in South America. But we're not going to talk about that until next week. So this week, again, we're going to talk about this. Let's zoom up right to where the Olmecs were. They're around Veracruz. Now, some of the cities were like San Lorenzo. I'll actually show you a picture of this. Actually, here, let me bring up our images. I do have them ready. Here you go. You have like San Lorenzo, Laguna de los Cerros, I think. Tres Zapatos, which, doesn't that mean 3 shoes? I will look that up because I know that's probably wrong. Anyways, so this was the Olmec culture. The reason why the Olmec culture is so important is because this was one of the cradles of the largest civilizations. And they were during around the 1400s. Let's see, going into the curriculum, I have in here 1600 BC to 350 BC. And they speckled with different sites all over the place, with different temples, pyramids, cities, and such. Now, they didn't have many people to go against as far as we know. There were actually tribes out there at that time that were not part of the Olmecs, but we're not exactly sure how that all fit together. Again, theory and fact. The fact is that there was people very, very long ago in this area. We call them the Olmecs. Interesting enough, the Olmecs most likely did not call themselves the Olmecs. We don't know what they called themselves because it's not written down. But what we do know is that Olmec is an Aztec translation as rubber people. Why rubber people? Well, rubber was actually made from the trees, the sap of some of the trees in this area. That's where rubber originated from. Rubber bands, all these different things that have to do with rubber. This is where, supposedly, assuming that everything's the same, was where it all started. So that's an interesting thing to know. I mean, that's always great. Actually, that's not even in the curriculum. That wasn't a part that I thought would be a big part. So going a little bit back, we are today, this week, we're going to be talking about ancient Mesoamerica. In the book, in the curriculum, you'll actually get to know about the Olmecs, the Mayas, and the Aztecs. Now, the Inca civilization is down lower, so that's not technically part of it. But it is a great civilization that was built off of the Mesoamerica, sorry, not the Mesoamerica, so the Olmec cradle. And again, this is all assumed that we know what we're talking about, but we go as far as we can. Okay, so why were they so important? So let's first off, what do you think this is? I'm going to scratch my head because that's what I did when I first saw it. What do you think that is? Well, if you look at it, again, it's just a mound. There's earthwork up in North America. The tribes did that. Actually, you do x-ray in this. This is a pyramid. Underneath all that dirt is a pyramid built by the Olmecs. That's intriguing. Why would they do that? And why is it so... How does it have so much dirt on top of it? Don't know exactly. Why is there so much vegetation on all the ruins after the ruins? Vines crawl. Dirt doesn't exactly move, but maybe it was actually made mostly of dirt. Don't know. So the cities, I'll zoom up this just a little bit. The cities were built into the wall. Why is that? Well, if you think about it, we talked about North America, and we talked about the very hot temperatures and also the very low temperatures. And what would they try to do? They would try to get below the surface. So it would be called near subsurface or semi-subterranean housing. In these, now the earth could have built up over time, blowing winds, all these different things, organic material all decomposing, or they could have dug down in order to get the cool air during the summer and the warm air during the winter. Now, if you know Mexico, there's not much of cool air. It's not really a cold area, but it does get hot because you're right on the equator. Now, it's not extreme hot. This is actually a semi-moderate but very humid environment. So being able to go low in the ground, have stones around you. I mean, what do stones do? You go into a cave, you're going to feel the cold breeze coming out of there. And it's not even going to have to be that much colder, but it's the lack of humidity that's being changed by the heat, and also the cool air that's coming up from under the ground. That's why a lot of these places were subterranean. Let's keep going. What is this? This is some of the ruins of the Olmecs. They had temples, they had cities, and now you can see that there's vegetation growing over a lot of it. Why is it? Again, there was buildup over years. There were storms that would push organic materials, including leaves and other things, and then that would decompose and create dirt, which would then cover this area. There's a lot of different theories on these things. They might have even had this be dirt because they wanted to be able to have grass in there. Who knows? It's exactly the truth. Who really knows? You don't know. I don't know. The archaeologists don't know 100%. Just the best that they can do. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So again, if you're listening to the podcast, you're not going to be able to see some of these things, which is okay. You don't have to see them. You got the curriculum. It'll show you some of the things in there. But one of the things to really understand is that much like the Aztecs, we're going to go over that, you get to see a lot of different structures that are built. The Olmecs built some of the first structures that we know of in this area, including Incas too, actually. They were fairly close to the Olmecs. But one of the things that the Olmecs are very much known for is this. If you're looking on the podcast, if you're looking at the YouTube channel, you'll see that there's an Olmec head. It's called a colossal head. These colossal head structures were about 40 tons. Now, what's 40 tons? What's a ton? It's 2,000 pounds. So that one rock could weigh about 80,000 pounds. How in the world would you move that? Actually, let's start off with how big is that? Okay, so 80,000 pounds. Some of them go about 6 feet tall, maybe even up to 10 feet tall. That's a person compared to one of the smaller Olmec heads. So, I mean, it's not huge, but the larger ones can get up to, again, 80,000 pounds. And how do they get them there? This is the assumption of how they get them there. They would float them across the rivers on logs. So they'd make makeshift rafts and float them over. Again, it's 80 tons. That's got to be a pretty hefty raft. Most rafts, if you make one layer, and I've done it before, you step on it, you're sinking one of the corners. This had to have a lot of levels of logs underneath, probably crisscrossing, because it's the best way of keeping the structure together, in order to get that, again, 80-ton rock on there. Maybe it wasn't 80 tons. Maybe this one that's showing in the picture is about 10 tons. That's still 20,000 pounds. Or maybe 5 tons. That's still 10,000 pounds. It's really heavy, in other words. Okay. But they would dig them out of big mountains and carve them. So let's go back. Well, before we get into the art, let's go back to the Olmec head. So this is really interesting. We were actually listening to this. If you go back to the second episode, we were talking about the Olmecs. We were talking about the colossal heads and the difference between the theory and fact. There's, again, a big difference, especially when it comes to old, very old civilizations like the Olmecs. So if you look at the helmet, some like to say, oh, that's what they used to wear for the ball game. Well, interesting enough, these are also supposed to be their leaders, those that they look up to, even possibly their gods. Why would their leaders be wearing the cap that they used for the ball games? They did not play. Maybe there was one or two that did, but they did not play because they were entertained by others. They want to be entertained by others. So that's why this theory of this being a helmet from the ball game, it doesn't hold up too much muster. A lot of archaeologists actually say it. Well, oh no, that's not a lot. I do not want to say that like the majority or anything do. Most of them say, we don't know. They also don't say, what is this head? It has features of everywhere from Africa to Polynesia, which is basically Tonga, Samoa, and those type of people. And so this is not 100% exactly what the people in Mexico look like, though there are some that still do, which means, okay, was it someone that was living here in during that time? Because the people up north, the people that supposedly came over the land bridge, do not have these features. So where did those features come from? Another thing that they do not really know. And so a lot of these features, again, could have been, because we've already talked about this, could have come in from other areas. You could have actually had people that floated in from other countries. You actually can read this in the curriculum, but we actually have a lot of the DNA research behind it that actually say some of these people in the Mesoamerica area, and also some in North America, because again, they would have probably mixed over time, have what we call the, I'd have to find it in the curriculum, but it's the same genome, the same DNA structured mitochondrial DNA as those in the Middle East and even Israel. That's really interesting. The facial structures of someone from Africa or Tonga. So this is amazing stuff, because it does not mean that they didn't all have to come over the land bridge. Some may have come over the land bridge. Some may have come by sea. We don't know exactly what's going on there. Again, because we weren't there, you weren't there, none of these archaeologists were there. And so we do not know exactly what's going on. But let's go over some of the other things that we found from the Olmecs. This is some of the art that was found for the Olmecs. These are, I'm guessing, people that they know, people that they don't know. But look at the facial structures on it. It's same facial structures, but the head structure is different. It's a lot more elongated than normal humans. Maybe that's supposed to be a headdress. Maybe that was. Again, who knows? Let's go over some others. These are some of the art pieces that we find. And interesting enough, you might say, hey, is that writing? No, that looks more like a pattern. But did they have writing? Did they have writing that far back? 1600 BC to 350 BC, actually. So I'm going to show you a few more images. Oops, we're going to bypass that. There is actually writing from the Olmecs. Now, what these actually mean, we can't really tell. Again, like everything else, the theory is that we have some of these words actually figured out. These are some of the words from the Olmec vocabulary from the scripts that we have found. Again, they're all stone scripts, because most of the other materials, if it was paper, it would not have made it. If it was cloth, it wouldn't have made it. These again is, let's see, 1600 BC. That's 1600 plus whatever we have right now, so it's 2020. So it's 3,624 years from the Olmecs when they started until now. Do you really think that paper or cloth would have probably made it that long? It would have had to be very much preserved, kept away from any kind of elements, kept away from any insects or any moisture as well. There are other scripts as well from the possible Olmecs. Again, most of these we do not know what they actually mean. We can only assume that we know what they mean. This is why Mesoamerica is so fascinating, because we don't know. So the best we can do is we can assume that we understand what they were trying to tell us. So this is some of the carvings that they found in some areas for the Olmecs. A lot of them you can see actually have a lot of similarities to what they drew with the Aztecs. And why is that? Well, interesting enough, if you go back to the map, let's go back to the map. Veracruz and down south was actually where the Mayas were. Oh, sorry, not the Aztecs. Looks very similar to the Mayas. Sorry, I have both of them on my mind. Because the Mayas were down south. Did they overcome some of the lands that the Olmecs had? Yes, but there was no Olmecs at the time. Why? Because they destroyed themselves. They left. They dispersed. The culture fell apart. It was one of the cradles of early ancient America, but we don't know what happened because they disappeared. So in the book, you're actually going to find some of the origins. So we're going to go over that in just a minute. But let's talk about first what was happening during that time. So over here, we have the Olmecs. Basically, this small of area, just around Veracruz, basically where the land from the Gulf Coast, it comes down on the east side of Mexico, and then it curls back up into a peninsula, and then goes back down. So that little bowl is basically where the Aztecs were, nearing the sea, because they would take some of their subsistence, their resources from the sea, but also coming down lower. Now, what was happening during this time? Okay, so you have in Egypt, you have the New Kingdom that was showing up. That was something that was big. As far as we know, no influence on the Olmecs. So you had a lot happening in Egypt that was starting to expand. Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica, again, it was, or sorry, not Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia. You have Mesoamerica in the Americas. Mesopotamia was like in the Middle East. This is Babylon. This is Assyria. They were ramping up. So again, Babylon actually showed up around 1792 BC, so right around the time of the Olmecs. And again, these dates could be off by a hundred years, a few hundred years. We're not quite sure. Okay, so going on, what was happening with Israel? Israel had the exodus out of Egypt. They left Egypt at the time, created a united monarch in Israel, and this is around. The Exodus was supposedly around 1500 BC, so around the same time as the Olmecs. They were leaving Egypt and coming up into where Israel now is. Okay, so what were some of the other things? India was making new moves. China was making a lot of moves, especially Shang Dynasty. Early Shang Dynasty was the first historically confirmed dynasty of China, and that was around 1600 BC as well. So all these things are happening like the exact same time. Very intriguing how these all happen together. I would love to hear some of your theories, not adults. Adults have plenty of theories. I want to hear some kids' theories of why, or students' theories of why these things were happening. Make that an assignment. Have fun with that. Okay. The next thing is you have Europe and Mediterranean areas forming and such. So, okay, let's go over. I found out that somebody keeps texting me and it keeps making noise, and I don't like that, especially when I'm on a podcast. So I'm going to ignore that and keep going. Now let's go to the origins of the Olmecs. This is actually where we go more into where they came from. So this is the origins, the start, and the decline, the ending of the Olmecs. So they're starting with different ideas. One, again, that they came from the north. Like most of the North American tribes, they came down from the north. Why? Because of following the herds, following agriculture. Now, influence of other regions. There were actually other regions that were having interaction with the Olmecs. There was trade networks during that time. Yeah, 1600, after the Neolithic era, again, that's when everyone was starting to become families or tribes or villages or even civilizations. So this is after that point. So there was influence from other regions. And so they could have moved down south to be away, start their own organization, and still have trade with all these other areas. Now, here's the interesting thing. This one's called the transoceanic contact hypothesis. Now, this is where the people sailed from different locations. I'll give you an example. Those in Tonga have sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes supposedly are not native to that area. But where do we have them? We have them right here in the Americas. They're native here. Where do we have them? We have them around the Olmecs. I shouldn't say the Olmecs. Mesoamerica. Where else do we have it? Funny enough, this is what I told you last week. We have it up in Alaska. What? Really? Yeah. So all these different places, they were native here, and the cultures had a lot of similarities. So people in Tonga could have had some sort of interaction, or not just the people in Tonga, people that went out to Tonga could also have had interactions as well. So you could have had people that stopped in Tonga, while others of their culture came over to the Americas. This is again called the transoceanic contact hypothesis. Hypothesis. We're not going over this much because we don't know how much to actually we agree with it or not, but it is something that you should know because there are so many different ways that people could have come to the Americas. Okay, origins. That's possibly their origins. Now, what about the decline? So in the curriculum, we actually go over some of these. Environmental changes. There are volcanoes that erupted at certain times over in Asia that the ash is actually found in Mesoamerica, in Central America. So why would that be significant? Yeah, so it blew through the air. Big deal. Was because if the ash cloud actually covered parts of that area, what would the people have thought if they were the Olmecs, seeing this darkened sky for no reason? Again, very superstitious possibly, or very religious. Who knows? What would they have thought when a try this one? When a solar eclipse happened, what do you think they would have thought of? Would the gods be upset? Would they actually know that there's a difference between the sun and the moon and that they're on a constant rotation? I mean, we figured it out, and actually they were pretty advanced. I'm pretty sure they knew a lot more than we give them credit for. A lot of archaeologists say they're very primitive. I highly doubt that. A lot of these civilizations actually had information about astronomy. They had about the seasons. Again, we talked about this last week, but everything to do with survival. If it had to do with survival, these people knew it, because everything that they lived on was to survive and to thrive. I mean, thrive in their sphere. But they were most interested in keeping alive and learning about these things, especially when it comes to agriculture, the movement of animals, the seasons. All these things were so important for them to understand. Let's go back into some of the theories of why they dispersed, why the Olmec culture went away. Okay, so the first one, again, environmental changes. The weather could have gotten hotter. Now, you remember, during this time, it was after the last ice age. When the ice age happened, the water levels rose and it got a little bit hotter. So much that the Sahara Desert possibly dried up. You're going to learn about it when you go into ancient civilizations. But in ancient civilizations, you actually learn about the Africans and how the Sahara Desert, miles and miles upon miles, thousands of miles of sand, possibly was fertile, moist, agricultural land. And so what happened during that time between, let's see, I think about 10,000, even 7,000 BC to 1500, the earth got hotter. It was climate change. There was climate change. Again, it wasn't anything that man did, because there's no industrial revolution. There was no smoke except for the sometimes putting out a fire. But if you think about it, one forest fire could probably account for about 1,000 years worth of primitive fires that were out there. Maybe not that much. Maybe 100, maybe 10 years. Let's just say 10 years of forest fires, because they happened all the time too. Even back then, even without humans being there, they started because there was lightning that would strike. There's other factors that would cause fires to start up. So it wasn't because of global warming in the sense that a man-made global warming. No, this was the earth changing and the climate changing. And so could they have dispersed because of that? Yeah. But why would they have dispersed altogether? Why would they have left? It could have been famines. It could have been other things like that. How about the degradation of land? They could have used up their land. Okay, so their land runs out of being fertile. Don't they just move over as a culture to the next spot? Okay, so I don't fully agree with that one. Again, this is my theory, and we don't have fact exactly what happened. So another theory is, I'm going to do number 2 last. The next one is external pressures. Okay, actually, the next 2 are very much the same. So the second one is the social and political factors. So there were constant internal fighting. Anyone that gets power is mostly going to be fighting for power. Just because we have the Democrat Party with Kamala Harris before this presidential election, and we have Donald Trump with the Republicans, that this was the first time this ever happened, that there was fighting between 2 parties. No, the fighting between 2 parties went back for generations, and even in their own civilization. Again, we're the United States. We're one, as much as possible. And we have 2 parties within that one country that are competing against each other. Democrats and Republicans. You also have independents, but 2 parties. 2 major parties. There's other ones, but they're small. Okay, so in the Olmecs, there could have been the exact same thing, where you had 2 competing parties, maybe even 3 competing parties. And what would happen if they're competing parties? Well, back then, there's a lot of words, but it was also grabbing arms, grabbing your weapons, attacking. Now, maybe it wasn't internal, maybe it was external. That's number 3. Well, there is internal fighting or external fighting. There possibly, most likely, was fighting. and the destruction of that's why we have ruins, destruction of the cities, burning, looting, stealing, killing. All these things happen, most likely happened, which actually brings up the decline of the Olmecs, again, around 350 BC. Possibly even a little earlier. We just don't know. And the fact that the Mayas, when they came in and were established, they built on top of the Olmecs in a lot of places. So if they were building on top of the Olmecs, what happened to the ruins? Well, they were used by the Mayas or other tribes in the area. If they're used up like that, a lot of the information that we have from there is tainted because you had another tribe right on top of them using the same facilities, using the same everything else. So no one exactly knows what happened. But again, this is the fascinating part. This is the excitement. You dig in. Okay, who here likes Christmas? Raise your hand. If you're driving, which is so an adult, do not raise your hand. Everyone else, raise your hand. If you like Christmas, raise your hand. Okay, why do you like Christmas? People say the food. Some say it's a celebration of my faith. Now, as a child, as a student, why do you really like Christmas? I'm sorry. As youth, even adults, we're selfish. A big part of it is because of the presents, right? Okay. For most people, it is because of the presents. What happens? I'm going to take you into a little scenario. Okay. So you go back, let's say 1892. You travel back into Mexico and you're traveling through these jungles. You're trying to find something. You know something's out there. You just don't know what it is. While you're walking, you hit your foot on something. It's a really hard stone. You look down and there's carvings in it. It's like, wait a second. What is this? You pick it up. You look at it. This was man-made. You're in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of Mexico, well, southern part of Mexico. And you found something. You don't know what it is, but you know it down deep that you found something. So what do? Oh, one thing, you're going to look around a little bit more before you go show it to everyone. You're going to look around. As you're looking around, you're finding buildings of stone, man-made. Huh. What could this be? You go further. You find other buildings, man-made, of stone. You find people can actually go inside. Nice and cool inside. Must be that there was a civilization here. There was somebody living here. You go deep in and you start finding artifacts on the ground. You find trinkets. You find artwork. You find maybe even a tablet. Not a device. A tablet. A stone tablet or a metal tablet. I found something. Yes, you did. Now, say you're not in the jungle. Maybe you're farming land. And all of a sudden you find a big rock with carvings on it. Well, if you know history, around this time, a farmer is actually the first one that found writing from the Olmecs on it. And it pointed back to about 1600 BC. This was a farmer farming his land, finding a stone, and I don't know exactly what the structure was called, I can't remember, but a large one. I mean, large. And there's writing on it. Say, I found something. How would you feel if you found that? How would you feel if you found inside a jungle, inside a ton of trees and vines and vegetation everywhere, a city inside that jungle that you could not see from up above if you flew over it? This was so exciting for every archaeologist that came into this area. I have a few more pictures I wanted to show you. Oh, I guess I don't. Well, that's okay. So let's go back. Let's say you found, oh, here, this is the picture I wanted to see. Now, even these days, we are finding new things. Say you're not back in 1800. You're like, the 1800s, or even early 1900s. They found everything. They're not going to find anything new. Actually, this is recent in the last few years. Aerial pictures that can get past the vegetation and actually use sonar or a type of radar to be able to find all these different parts. This is the jungle. You don't see any trees, do you? This is underneath the jungle. These are the ceremonial sites and other artifact sites that they found. This is a city made by the Olmecs under vegetation that you would never have seen by the naked eye or by even traveling through the jungle. Archaeology is not dead. Archaeology has just begun. We may have explored most things when it comes to the Earth's surface, minus inside the Amazon and some of the tribes that were there, or down up in the Mexico area, Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua. There are a lot of places that humans have not taken over and are completely covered by vegetation. So we couldn't find sites like this. So, yes, the legacy has not ended. The mystery has not ended. The Olmecs are still alive in our archaeology. Not still alive today, but in the stories that the archaeology can tell. So in here, we actually go through a lot of the archaeology that you would find if you did some research on it, which I do suggest you do some research on it. And then there's other things that are in here as well that are very important. Now, some of the big archaeological findings for the Olmecs is actually San Lorenzo, which we talked about, and La Venta. You need to check those two out. And there's a few other ones. Colossal heads, all these different things. There are some great life lessons. One of the things that you can find from the Olmecs, yes, you can find out that they survived so early. They made all these great advancements. Let's take, for this one, let's embrace their innovation and creativity. They didn't have anything. When they came into this area, they may not have had really anything. And yet, they made tools. They made art. They made whole cities and a civilization. That takes creativity. So you, as a student, should know that everything in history points to how you can actually become better as a person. If you are a creative type, be creative. Enjoy your creative side. Bask in it. That's a great thing that came from the Olmecs. Now, also, and read through some of the other ones, legacy, resilience. Again, those are normal ones that a lot of these people went through because, again, they are Native Americans in ancient times. And Native Americans being not just in North America or even just in the United States, all the Americas. So we're going to go over some also vocabulary words. Everything from we already gone over the colossal head. They also had calendar systems for the Olmecs. Jaguars were animals that were there. Basalt was a type of volcanic rock. Actually, the colossal heads were built out of basalt. You have glyphs, which were the writings or the carvings that you find. Now, we come to the engaging activities that are at the end of the Olmecs. Try a colossal head. We're sending you with clay. Take the clay and map the colossal head. Now, in here, I don't talk about this because the basic idea came out later on, but this is fun. Take your parents' face. This is the students. Take your parents' face, have them sit down. They could even be reading. Take their face and mold them with the clay that you have. Make a colossal head for your mom or your dad. You can even make it funny. But make a colossal head. Keep that. This clay is not, I think it's not going to dry. It's modeling clay. It does not dry. So you could use it multiple times if you wanted to. Find the perfect head. So mom's head, dad's head to model after. And create this colossal head. Again, we didn't give you a ton of clay. So it would be a small one. But based off the colossal heads, how would you have designed this if you were to model your parents? There's other ones, but that was the one I wanted to focus on. As I'm so excited, that's why I put that the clay in there, so you can do that. You can use the clay for other experiments as well. You can get other amounts of clay if you want to make a bigger one or do other activities with clay. But this one in particular, do it. Take a picture, make a video, send it to me. I would love to post it on our YouTube channel, put it on our podcast. Can't wait to see what you come up with. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time when we talk about the... Oh, shoot, I closed my curriculum. Is it the Aztec or is it the Maya? What is it? No, I went back too far. It's not the Olmecs, because we just went over them. So what is it next? Went back way too far. There's the Olmecs. The next we're going to be talking about is the... Come on. Still in the Olmec area. What is it? The Mayas. That's tomorrow. Of course, it should be the Mayas because it's going to be built nearing or on top of some of the sites for the Olmecs. But you're going to find out why that didn't happen right away. This is very interesting. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Take care and talk to you tomorrow. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.